But what you have to do is you just have to drink down those emotions. Remember, you're doing this for God. Remember, you're carrying out what it says in the Quran and what your duty it is as a Muslim.
And you didn't question that?
I didn't know. I didn't question that.
Caliphate is a New York Times podcast that follows journalist Rukmini Callimachi in her quest to understand who is ISIS. She is contacted by a defected Canadian ISIS member known as Huzaifa, who reveals his story to her in a hotel room in Toronto. He admits to having executed someone when following orders, how he felt remorse for his actions, and how he escaped through Turkey to return home to Canada. The final episode of the podcast is recorded a year after Callimachi's first interview with him, and she says,
"The counselor that we introduced him to has essentially given up. He considers Huzaifa to be perhaps even more radicalized now than he was at the beginning of their counseling sessions in 2016.
Even after escaping from ISIS and showing remorse, in time this boy has ideologically retreated to his previous extremist views. Listening to this made me wonder what dynamics exist that allow this boy to justify these opinions ethically, and what can we learn about our own ethics when mediating this story. To make sense of this case study, I'm going to apply the concept of the self and its relationship to others. The self refers to an individual's impression of their own identity in relation to others. A person's self fluctuates in relation to their understanding of their differentiation with other people. This concept comes from the chapter Transforming the Bystanders from Irving Staub's 2003 book The Psychology of Good and Evil. An individual's embeddedness in a group can reduce the person's likelihood of responding to the groups harming those in subgroups as well as to official policies that are potentially destructive. Staub identifies that individuals have been categorized as either independent with their own thoughts and ideas, an autonomous self, or embedded in a group so much that they are incapable of independent definitions of reality, an embedded self. Staub, however, goes on to stress that a third category needs to be created, one he refers to as a connected self. Staub defines a connected self as someone who is less self-contained and more connected to others than an autonomous self, but the person is differentiated and flexible and can separate the self from others and from the group. Using characters from the television show A Game of Thrones as an example, Littlefinger would be considered an autonomous self as he has no real loyalty and manipulates everyone to get what he wants. Lancel Lannister, on the other hand, would be considered an embedded self. When he joins the Sparrows, he becomes a puritanical fanatic and follows orders without question. The problem with this is that most characters, like most people, don't fall neatly into either category. Tyrion Lannister is a good example of Staub's idea of a connected self, as he identifies his difference from the group and can provide critical loyalty to Daenerys. Something Staub says should be encouraged. In the real world, that is. Which brings us back to Huzaifa in Caliphate. Extremist groups are comprised of embedded selves. They don't have the ability for group awareness and critical loyalty. Huzaifa, however, when working as an ISIS policeman, had group awareness. He executed people, felt remorse and escaped. 2 years after his return to Canada, however, he is thought to be even more radicalized. His self is more embedded in this group than ever, even though he betrayed them by leaving. He feels more connected to them than he does to Canadian society, possibly because what he did is considered unforgivable by his government and society. Christopher Bennett explains the dynamics of forgiveness as involving overcoming emotions of condemnation towards the wrongdoer. These emotions might themselves have some value as responses to wrongdoing. Therefore, we should bring these emotions to an end and hence forgive, but only when it is no longer appropriate to condemn. So, the withholding of forgiveness has a function, although I wonder if, in this situation, the society knows when the right time is to forgive. I wonder if we sought to truly understand and forgive these people, would that be more an effective form of combat than the xenophobic rhetoric peddled in the media? To answer my initial question, the dynamics that exist which allow Huzaifa to double back on his rejection of extremism include his embedded self within the group of extremist Islam and an unwillingness of Canadian or Western society to forgive and deal with this social issue effectively. This example is incredibly nuanced and layered, and this individual's ethics deeply complicated. To make a claim on his motives based on the slice of information we are presented with in the podcast would be oversimplifying it. Looking forward, Staub's promotion to create cultures and institutions that promote the evolution of connected selves, people who empathize and work for the common good of the group, whilst also maintaining enough independent thought to be able to identify potential detriments, is encouraging.